So welcome, brothers and sisters. Not sure if any sister has joined us yet, but I'm sure if there isn't, some sisters will join us very soon. So welcome. This is the Consensusism Study Group, and we meet every Thursday where we discuss philosophy and ideology, which is the philosophy and ideology of Pan-Africanism with specific reference to the African Revolution. And the African Revolution is a continuation of the Pan-African conferences that was initiated by our brother from the Caribbean, you recall, which then came to the continent when Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah came into office. So that collection of thought, which is radical Pan-Africanism, is in his book that he wrote called Consensusism. And that's a book we study in the Consensusism Study Group on Thursdays. So strictly philosophy and ideology. And then on Saturdays like today, we have a conversation around the unification of Africa. Because we came to the conclusion that unification of Africa wasn't being discussed at various levels. You wouldn't go into a church or a mosque or the marketplace or the workplace, where you find ordinary Africans discussing the unification of Africa. It is a radical Pan-African view that the unification of Africa is the most important thing that must be on our agenda. And when we talk about unification of Africa, we include also our diasporan brothers and sisters, and they are linking up with us. And it's for that reason that we looked at Haiti some time ago, and so on. So today we have Brother Taiwo, who is our brother, based, I believe, in the most powerful country on the African continent, which is Nigeria. And he's going to be presenting his thoughts on African unification to us, after which we'll have a discussion. And if need be, we can have a second session on the topic of African unification. The strategic goals of radical Pan-Africanism are, as those of you who attend our class will know by now, the total liberation of Africa, the unification of Africa, and the development of Africa. And those are the strategic goals. And there are the various views on this issue. And so, for example, Museveni believes that Nkrumah was wrong and that he was right, and that what we needed doing was unified on regional basis. Museveni has been in office for over 30 years, and yet we haven't seen the unification of East Africa, which he believes should unify. We haven't seen it. So those who believe in regionalism say, well, that is where we should start from. And yet nothing has happened. ECOWAS, we haven't seen a single currency up to now. All they do is talk about the fact that regional unification is what is important, and yet we don't see anything. But we also came to the conclusion that we're also not saying anything in terms of those of us who want the unification of Africa as a whole. We're also not saying anything. So that's why we've initiated this discussion on Saturday. So, Brother Taiwo, welcome. But before Brother Taiwo shares his thoughts, we normally have look at a newspaper called The Continent. And The Continent is what we have decided to look at. We are hoping to initiate our own magazine. And our brother DJP has volunteered to lead that project for us. So we are in discussion as to how to start that. The whole point of the news, when we look at them, is to arrive at an understanding of the balance of forces on the continent, in the sense that, is a continent moving towards unification, or is a continent moving away from unification? And if so, how far? So On the screen is the front page of the continent, and I'm going to go through it. And if anybody has any news from wherever they are, they will then also share. We'll then conclude that. We'll listen to Brother Taiwo's thoughts on unification, and then we'll open up the room for discussion. Brother Taiwo will have the opportunity to address the questions arising first, and we'll have a discussion. There are about 12 of us on the Zoom call right now. Yeah, brothers and sisters all over. Right, so let me go through the news for this week from the continent. The continent is produced from South Africa, but its leading thoughts are from Ghana and South Africa. They undertake statistical studies across all African countries and so on. So they do very, very good work. Right. So I believe, Brother Pigeon, I believe the screen is clear. Yeah. Brother Pigeon? Okay, Brother Pigeon is not responding.
Yes, Brother Kwame, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Is the screen clear?
You can enlarge the screen a bit.
Is it on the continent?
Yes, just enlarge it a bit.
I will enlarge it indeed.
Yes, on the continent. Just enlarge it a bit.
Is that better?
Yes, that's okay.
Okay. So here's the continent.
Yeah, that's better.
Thank you. On the front page is this lady who is a Kenyan, and it says the system is determined to fail its people. For us, the system is none other than neocolonialism. Anyway, here is the lady again. Her name is Bena Buluma. She is a fighter because in the post-election violence that shook Kenya in 2017, her two sons at the age of 24 and 26 were killed by the police, and that really shook her. And she became a freedom fighter, if you like, for the slums and for the use of illegal or excessive force in Kenya. In the floods that happened recently, her house was swept away by the river that burst its bank, a channel, and a water channel that burst its banks. And she was amongst a number of people who have died in Kenya. And here she is with her hands raised. When I read the story, I was full of tears. The inside this magazine this week are women paying for men's sins. There's a story on the UK. There's a story on Facebook and how Facebook has become an apologia for the Somali authorities. There's a photo on dangerous voyages of African youths leaving the continent, and there's politics. There's something on politics and data on women, and then there is a story also on a Wale guy who is we are told one of the exciting science fiction writers on the planet, and he is also from Nigeria. And then there is something on Mauritius, and so here we go. Here is Bozize, who was the former president of the Central African Republic. He now lives in Guinea and wants to return.
Can you scroll down?
And here he is. Yeah. I'm scrolling down. Can you see it?
Yeah.
It happened last week. I've scrolled down. Can you see?
Yes, that's clear.
Okay, so that's Bozize's picture, and then
yes,
South Africa.
Yes, it's okay.
Thank you. In South Africa, a law they are waiting for President Ramaphosa to sign a climate change bill to make it law in South Africa. So here is Bozize, as I said, and he's been tried in absentia in Bangui, which is the capital of the Central African Republic. Ethiopia is now facing a strict EU visa regime. And so that's the story here. And the argument is that Addis Ababa is not doing its part in taking back asylum seekers. So Europe has reacted by restricting their visa, making their visa regime more stricter. Scrolling down, we have DRC. The story is that officials from Iraq are studying how DRC, a doctor in DRC, Nobel laureate Denis Mukwege, his model of care apparently includes medical, psychological, and legal service for survivors. And they are seeing how he's doing it. So, so Africa also has things that other people can learn from. It's not all doom and gloom. Then in Zimbabwe, the story is that the Zig that was launched is selling on the black market at a higher price. That's the story there. Politics has entered sports again. Sorry. It turns out that the Algerian customs officials seized the jerseys of the Moroccans because the Moroccan team's kit had on it the disputed Western Sahara region, which, as you know, Morocco claims is part of Morocco. And as I understand it, the African Union's position even is that Western Sahara should be a free, a separate and a liberated territory. But Morocco continues to claim Western Sahara. So each sports players went to Algeria with this kit, with that message, and the Algerians basically seized it. So the match was cancelled. Here is, then on the left here is the story that Soumana Idrissa Mayiga, who publishes a newspaper in France called and I can't pronounce the French word, but in English it means the investigator. So he's been investigating certain things in Niger, and the Nigerian junta are not happy. Apparently they've been cracking down on journalists, we are told. On the right is the king of the cryptocurrency world, CEO of Binance, who is now going to serve about 4 months in prison because he broke U.S. laws on currency. So basically, criminals and all kinds of people are using Binance to launder money, and so he broke U.S. law. So he's imprisoned. So he's been found guilty. He pleaded guilty, and is now going to serve 4 months instead of 3 years as they wanted. Sarkozy's wife is in trouble because she's been asked to questions about the money that Sarkozy purportedly received from Gaddafi, $5 million US. The same company, Binance, is also in trouble in Nigeria. Whilst CZ, that's Changpeng Zhao, is being imprisoned by the American authorities, in Nigeria, its head of compliance, Tigran Gambayan, is also in jail because they were using Binance to basically conduct illicit flows that affected the Nigerian currency. So the Nigerian authorities are not happy at all. So Binance is in trouble also in Nigeria. In Uganda, you will recall that the Speaker of Parliament it's been alleged that she's corrupt. This is a she, Mary, the two, yeah. Mary Agnes is been apparently she's corrupt, and so so they've imposed sanctions on them and travel bans and asset freezes. But they claim that it's because of the law on homosexuality. That is why that's why the UK is punishing them. That it has nothing to do with the thousands of iron sheets that they stole from the people of Karamoja in Uganda. In Burkina Faso, Western media are being banned, like the BBC, Voice of America, TV5 Monday, Deutsche Welle, and so on. In other words, the main Western media are being banned because they are reporting adversely on Burkina Faso. If I may make a comment, some will say, well, they are interfering with freedom of information. But I don't know if you know that we here in Europe have also been banned from listening to the Russian TV station. They banned it here, so we can't listen to the news from Russia. So they are doing the same thing here that Burkina Faso are also doing. So it's not new. Now in Zambia, the story basically is that the women are suffering because the men are misbehaving. So the women can't take part in the Copper Queens in the Olympics and the women's AFCON because the men were being corrupt, and and FIFA got involved. FIFA asked for FAS, the Football Association of Zambia, to hold a meeting and sort out the problem. The court intervened.
Is Kwame frozen?
I suspect Kwame is frozen. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you, brother. Yeah,
yeah.
We can hear you, but could you make some co-hosts just in case you freeze as well?
Yeah, I did send a message to Kwame. I think he needs to know that he can't be heard. Let me just send him a message.
Brother Kwame, we can't hear you. So
can you hear me now?
Yeah, you are frozen. And can you make Sister Ida?
Yeah,
make Sister Ida, DJ Mr. P, and myself a co-host, please.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Where did I go
off?
We were talking about the
football.
Nigeria.
No, football in Zambia.
Okay.
No. It's on the situation with the banning of the coverage by the BBC and so on.
No, we covered that, and then we went on to the football in Zambia or Nigeria. Scroll up, please, Kwame.
Right, sorry, let me make the co-host first, and then I will move on.
It's football in Zambia, where the women are not participating.
Yes, it's to do with the men and the women playing football. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But is Ida here? Okay, yes, Ida, I can see you now. So I've made Brother Joseph said he wouldn't be here for a long time, so I've not made him co-host. So I've made Sister Ida, Brother Pigeon, Brother DJ Mr. P. I've made you all co-hosts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Brother Pigeon, should I as usual, should my link be interfered with, which happens? I don't think people are happy with me here. Do step in as usual. Thank you. Right. So let me continue. The time is 7:23. I shall proceed to conclude this as quickly as I can. So so I finished the football. Can you hear me okay? Yeah?
Yes.
So I'm scrolling down.
Yeah, can hear you okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's you no need to mute me. I'm muted at this end. I can mute at this end.
Okay. So in the UK here where I am, the story is that Rwanda is not a safe country for asylum seekers to be sent to. The government made all its presentations to the High Court. The courts rejected the government's story, and so the government decided that if they can't get their way in the courts, then they'll make a new law. So they've made a new law that says that the law says that Rwanda is a safe country. And so this is the story here. I mean, talk about dictators in Africa making laws against the people. It happens everywhere. There's a saying in my country, Ghana, that there's Mensa everywhere. Literally means human beings are the same. You know, they try to make it out that we are Africans are somehow these, that, and they do exactly the same things. Then this is the obituary on Bernard Buluma, who was the fighter for the human rights of people who, Brother Pigeon can maybe tell us more about this later. Apparently in Kenya, people are being shot, the police kill people for no reason and so on. And so she because her sons were killed in the post-election violence in 2017, she became like the mouthpiece of people whose children are shot by the police and the security forces. And unfortunately, in the last flooding, our sister lost her life. So that's the obituary on her. I've highlighted a few things in there. I'll read the one on the right. It says she dedicated the rest of her life to the fight against extrajudicial executions, becoming an outspoken and effective advocate for Kenya's poorest and most marginalized communities. So that is who she was. I believe in the future we're going to do, not too far future, we shall do a session on our women in Kenya who were maltreated under the Mau Mau rebellion and were raped and tortured and so on. We will do a session on this. I am myself interested in reading the book that has been written that Brother Pigeon has shared with us on how our women were treated under British colonialism. And that's something that a lot enough is not being heard about. So I intend to read the book before at least we do the session. And I encourage everyone to read that book. Brother Pigeon has shared it extensively. Here is a picture of Mama Victor again. It's a very sad story. As I said, when I read it, my eyes welled with tears. It's just so sad the way our leaders treat our people. You know, it's just so sad. Yeah, so that's a story. I'll scroll down to Kenya, and here is a picture of our brother sitting on one of the devastations. Now, I don't know whether this is ironic, but in February, President Ruto and his wife were kneeling down for Benny Hinn to pray for them. Benny Hinn told them that Kenya was a blessed country. 3 months later, Kenya has suffered one of the most devastating floods, you know, and yet the man of God said Kenya was blessed. He could not see the floods coming to warn them. They knelt down. His ministers were knelt down behind him and his wife, and they prayed for the country. And yet, look at what has happened. Again, very, very sad. Burst dams, wash away bridges, lost lives. But Peace has shared the continent. Please read it if you're interested. And the rain started in the middle of March and have just been historic in their intensity. Here's a picture of our brother trying to salvage what he can from the floods.
Brother Kwame.
Sad, yes.
Yeah, permit me to comment that even now I'm on a blackout because it has been raining for the last 7 hours. There's no power. And the dam actually busted. The dam actually broke its banks in that area. And so far, over 76 people have been found dead. Yeah. And many families are still missing, and the rain is heavy. The lake, the so-called Lake Victoria, which is Lake Nyanza, has also busted back to the community in the area. So the lake is also coming out, and many people are in a problem. That's what I want to say in regards to this.
It's a sad story, and our leaders are asleep. You know, they are asleep. They are asleep.
Brother Kwame, can I ask Brother Pigeon something?
Yes.
Are they not putting any tents or anything on higher ground for people to move up to? Please.
Brother Pigeon, look at the picture. Where will the tents be put? Look at the picture. Where will you put the tents?
Yeah, but they're down on the floodplain there, aren't they? Where all the flooding is. Can they not move people to higher ground, Brother Pigeon?
No, Brother Pigeon, can you answer that question, please? Thank you.
Okay, I think the government is not that prepared for high ground, and the high ground is not easily identified. Like where the dam swept people, actually the Red Cross went around to try making a tent. But where do you make a tent when the tent is also going to be flooded? Because it's raining heavily, that even if you make a tent, it's very heavily raining, my friend. It has rained, the last time it rained like this was 1961. As some people says in this country, where the elephants were taken away. But now even the snakes, the crocodiles are being swept from the parks, and the animals are coming out of the park. So it's very heavy. We don't know what might happen. But I think there are plans to try to do that. The school have been closed. They were supposed to be reopened because schools also have been carried by water.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Thank you.
Now, here is a map of Kenya. Kenya is bordered by Ethiopia, Somalia, the Indian Ocean, Uganda, and then a country to the south. I can identify that one. So Tanzania. Yeah, it's Tanzania. Yeah. So here's the stories there if you want to read. I picked this one up where it said the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya blamed a general disregard for planning and zoning regulations by property developers and on the destruction of wetlands as people settled into riverside areas like Mathare. You know, blaming property developers. Where is the government? In this country, property developers can't just build anywhere. You have to go for a planning permit. So where was the government? People were settling on these wetlands that you know should not be settled on. What did you do about it? In Ghana, there's a place called Jowulu. Saida will know about that because she's from Ghana as well. Jowulu, now the word Jowulu, I've anglicized it, but in Ghana, in the Ghanaian language, it's called Jowulu. Now, Jowulu in Ghana, which is the Ida's language, is basically a deep valley. That's what it means. So what it means is that when it rains, it's the pathway for water. Guess what? People want to build in this Jowulu. And then what do you think happened when it rained? Flooding, people's homes being destroyed, and so on. But then you ask, where is the government preventing these things from happening? That's why we're supposed to have a government, you know. But the neo-colonial governments are just not doing what they should be doing. But then does it surprise us? No, it doesn't. That's why we are asking for. Yes, brother.
The last report is that in the last 1 hour, my friend who lives in one of the biggest slums called Mukuru kwa Ruben actually has informed me that the government is demolishing their houses now as it continues to rain, saying that those houses were built under the sewer lines or the sewer whatever, but they're being demolished now as it is raining now. The schools have been demolished. So you wonder, how are they going to move? And already it's on the rain and you start doing demolition now. So that's also what's going on in the slums.
And that is because of the failure of government's housing policy. You know, build houses for the people. The welfare of the people is the supreme law. It has to be. It must be. You know, and that is not happening under neo-colonial governments. Anyway, here is a Facebook story. And basically, Somalian journalists are suffering because Facebook continues to take down their posts. But the story is that Facebook is where Somalians go for their news. So Somalian journalists put their news on Facebook. Facebook then removes the news. And so where would Somalians go for their news? Not only that, the authorities are now clamping down on them. And which means that people are not getting both sides of the story. Only the government side is being heard on Facebook. The opposition side is not being heard. But Nick Clegg, the former Prime Minister of England, of the UK, he is an official of Facebook, isn't he? These people. Anyway, so that's a story on Facebook. Here is a brother who has been arrested on security-related charges. And journalists are suffering. Journalists are suffering. I've highlighted this part that says, without meaningful intervention from Facebook and a commitment to safeguarding users' rights, the suppression of dissenting voices through online platforms will persist, perpetuating a climate of censorship and impunity. And then there's a photo essay. Apparently, people leave Africa, they want to go to the West or whatever. Their boats capsize and they die. Nobody knows. Their families don't know what has happened, and so on. So two journalists called Felipe Dana and Renata Brito investigated a particular boat, and that's what the story is here. And they found all kinds of things. Very sad story. Again, our leaders pretend they don't know what's happening. Our leaders are asleep. They are asleep. They don't know. They pretend they don't know what is happening. So here is a story of some brothers trying to get onto a fishing boat. This is a town, and these are basically a central market. So that's what these essays are about. Here is the boat. Here is a brother that was saved. He was rescued from the boat that went adrift. That's his picture. Then that's the family of the victims. Here is a mortuary where corpses are kept for identification. Very sad. Here are the clothing of some of those who died, and clothing was used to identify this brother. His brother, he's called Alassane So. His aunt used his clothing to identify him as a result of that investigation. Now we go to data. This is what the Afrobarometer does. And so Afrobarometer, so they do a great job. They are one of the leading statistical research organizations on the continent, and they research issues on different African countries. So here is, today they are reporting on the hurdles that women face. And there is still a lot of paternalism, discrimination against women in a lot of African countries, more so in Tunisia, Cabo Verde, Liberia, and so on. The countries where women face less discrimination, they go into politics, are Seychelles from the bottom, 31%, Congo, Brazzaville, Mauritius, Malawi, Tanzania, Ghana. Interestingly, Kenya, I look for Kenya, and Kenya is around 52%. 53% is the middle there, 53%. So Kenya is above the 39 country average. So our brother Pigeon has to do more to bring women into his party, so women can play a greater role in politics. So that is what this data is talking about this month. I would say that the data pages of the continent, if we bring them together, they'll give us a picture of what is happening on the entire continent. It's interesting because as far as consensusism is concerned, statistical data is how we can understand the two forces battling on the continent, both positive and negative forces. And then there's a review of the brother Wole Talabi, who is an engineer and a science fiction writer, and apparently he's one of the most exciting science fiction writers on the world stage today. So if you're interested in that story, please, you can read that. This is it's a waterfall, beautiful waterfall. I have one where I come from in Ghana called the Blue Waterfalls. And all sorts of books that you could read that basically link to what's happening in the continent, like in what is happening in the Saharan states. It's like more like things fall apart and so on and so forth. If you're interested, you can read that story. here is his brother called Larry Madowo. But Brother Pidgin, he's Kenyan, isn't he?
Yes,
Larry
he's Kenyan. He's Kenyan.
Yeah, he's been lambasted for reporting negatively on the floods in Kenya on the CNN. So people are not happy with how he's reporting.
Basically,
Kenya. Yes.
He said that he's not reporting what is good on Africa, he's reporting what is truth in Africa. So he says that his reports are what is truth, not what is positive or what should be good, but rather what is going on. Because he took a picture while he was on airport and the airport was flooded. So when that picture went on and people said that he's a negative ambassador, instead of appreciating the continent and hiding some dirt from the continent, he decided to expose the floods in the airport. That's where the conversation starts.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you. People are not happy with Larry at all. But you could argue that perhaps Larry is doing all this because he's excuse my language, a house Negro. Then there is a democracy in danger. Apparently, in Mauritius, democracy has worked very well until now, where the party in office, a militant socialist movement party, is now making laws that people see as negative. So they believe that, like Senegal, which we looked at earlier some time ago. As you know, Senegal has never had a coup. It's one of the few countries in Africa has never had a coup. And Senegal has the same reputation as India. As you know, India and Pakistan got independence from the British. Pakistan has had a lot of coups. India, not a single coup. They've always had civilian governments, just like Senegal. And Mauritius has almost the same kind of reputation. And now these militant socialist governments are about to destroy that. So that's the story on Mauritius. And that is the end of the continent. Thank you. Right. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Brother Pidgin or Brother Kwame, you're being asked in the chat if you can share the continent with people in the chat.
Yes, can you, Brother Pidgin, can you share it again? Maybe here rather on the WhatsApp group. Yeah.
I'll share it in the chat right away.
If they go to the website, they can download it for themselves.
Yeah, but they can also see it. It's okay. But it's okay. It's okay. They can have a look at it and then they can then download it for themselves. As I said earlier, we are trying to come up with our own magazine. Our own DJ Mr. P has volunteered to lead that project. We are discussing it, and going forward, hopefully he would be leading this part of Saturday rather than me. So it's a way of sharing the work amongst us. Anybody else is interested in the magazine project, please let us know. There's a lot to be done. Nkrumah always said, so much to be done, so little time. And it's a saying in Africa that when more of us hold the load, it becomes lighter. The load is only heavy if a few people carry it, but if we share it amongst ourselves, it becomes lighter. Brother Renumi, who I believe I saw here, Brother Renumi is here, isn't he? I saw him earlier, unless Brother Renumi sent me some magazines, which I requested. So thank you, Brother Renumi. Even I think he was here earlier. He may have his internet may have gone off. Right. So that is the story from the continent. And at the end of the day, the point about that is, where is the continent going? Is it going towards liberation, unification, development? Or from the stories we have heard, is the continent going more and more into illiberation, non-unification, and also non-development or underdevelopment? So that basically is it. There's a hand up. Let's see whose hand that is. Brother, sorry, I'm just scratching whose hand is up. Brother, DJ Mr. P.
Yes, brother. Are you going to ask everybody for their news, or
very quickly, so that then Brother Taiwo can present on unification, his thoughts on unification. Yes, you can start for us, Brother DJ Mr. P.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm conscious of time, but if there's any burning news we can share.
Yes, let's share burning news. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Very quickly. Right. What do we have? What do we have? In the UK, a 14-year-old boy was the victim, unfortunately, of a racial attack. He was murdered by a 36-year-old with a sword. But the big noise at the moment seems to be about the reporting on how the British media are actually reporting on this story, and it's not getting the right or the correct type of coverage, simply because this boy is obviously African and his life doesn't matter. So it's not.
Well, the one who died or the one who did the killing?
Oh no. It was a racially motivated murder. So the young boy is African, and it's a Caucasian that murdered him with a sword. So there's that going on at the moment. Also in political news, in the local elections in the UK, the Conservative Party, that's the party currently in power, got completely hammered. So it doesn't look like they're going to be around much longer. I think this country's had 14 years of enough of the Conservatives. There's a serious problem over in Sierra Leone regarding a drug called Kush. And too many of our young brothers and sisters in Sierra Leone right now are victims or suffering from addiction to this drug that they're smoking. And there are fears that it will start spreading across West Africa. So it's not, I don't think enough is being done, from what I've read, is enough is being done to contain the addiction rate in.
Right. Is that different from marijuana, brother?
Sorry?
Is that different from marijuana?
Oh, it's not weed. No. It's different to, yeah, it's nothing like marijuana. No, it's a completely different drug. And apparently they use, as I understand, they use material. I don't know if it's the actual the substance inside, I've forgotten what it's called, the substance inside your bones, the bone marrow. I don't know if it's old bone marrow that they're using or the actual bone that they grind down and use, but a lot of graves have been raided and the bodies removed, and they're using either the bones or the bone marrow from the deceased bodies in this drug. So, boy, it's pretty messy. It's pretty messy what's going on over there. Yeah. Also, one other story in Gambia, I posted earlier this week. Those of you on Mr. P's messenger line, I would have posted. You would have seen a video that I posted regards President Adama Barrow of Gambia, who purchased 89 SUVs for delegates at the OIC, which is happening right now in Gambia. OIC is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, 57, I think it's a total of about 57 countries, African and Saudi Arabian. So as I understand it, $300 million were given to Gambia to help develop, improve their roads, etc., which have not been completed for the last 5 years. A hotel was meant to be specially constructed for the delegates that have turned up this week. Again, not completed. And they've gone and spent how many millions on buying these 89 SUVs to drive the delegates around. And I got word just before we started our session tonight here that out of the 57 delegates that were meant to be attending the conference this evening, so far only 6 have turned up at the start of the conference. Not a very good look for President Adama Barrow, and that's my news.
Yeah, thank you, brother. These stories, they're everywhere. I can tell vehicle stories. But anyway, any burning news from anyone, please share with us. Thank you. Raise your hand and share with us.
I just want to share from Grenada and the Caribbean to some extent. And
Yeah.
I know there's another brother from Trinidad here. But basically, what I would say that happened in the Caribbean, in general, this week was that a number of countries have recognized Palestine as a state. And Jamaica is one of those, Barbados, Trinidad, and I believe Grenada. I'm not too sure. But a few countries definitely have decided to sign off, to sign Palestine up as a state. So basically, that was it. There was one other stuff, but and then in Grenada, our gun amnesty have fallen into place. Although on the same day with this schedule, there was 2 shooting incidents, which is very rare for Grenada.
Okay.
Anyway.
Thank you very much. Any other burning stories you'd like us to know about? Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to report that from of course, the other aspect of our technical working group on Haiti, and also the aspect of Africa for Haiti initiative, I've been able to make some formal meetings with the various activist societies in Kenya, and also reaching out from the Foreign Affairs Department to diplomatic sessions. So there's a plan to have a concert on Haiti in Kenya on around 29th June. Also coupled with the other ideas we've been discussing, including tree planting for Haiti across the globe, the run and walk for Haiti, and alongside many other activities, including the vigil and the rest that are being organized, both from our CSG technical working group and also in collaboration with other Pan-African activities or Pan-African organizations like Africa for Haiti. And we call upon any other Pan-Africans who feel like they can do something in regards to the solidarity for Haiti to get in touch so that we can move this together. We'll be having a technical working group meeting tomorrow at around 7 p.m. London time so that we can deliberate further on actionable plans for Haiti. So this is part of also what you're doing from CSG in terms of actions to what other sessions we've been having. Thank you for that, Brother Kwame.
Yeah, no, thank you. And we sound a call. Please, if you are here and you want to help, please get in touch. We have contacted, and we have been, Brother Pigeon will confirm, we have been contacted, we have reached out, and we have a lot of Pan-African organizations who have come forward and they want to work with us. And so we want brothers and sisters here, if you are interested, please come forward, let's work together. There aren't a lot of people working on the unification of Africa. We can be sure of that. So let us be the core group that is leading this conversation. Brother Taiwo, I hope you are ready to start soon. So here is the African anthem. Let's hear that. The time is 7:52 GMT London time. So let's hear the African anthem in the Swahili version, because Sister Ida thinks the English version is too. It sounds too much like an English. So let's go for the Swahili version, which is the original version. The words are powerful. Here we go. Can you hear it okay?
Yeah.
Tuungane sote na tushereke pamoja ushindi kwa ukombozi wetu. Tujitoe wenyewe, tusimame pamoja kulinda uhuru na umoja wetu. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote tuimbe pamoja, kuenzi shikamano hatima yetu. Tujitoe wenyewe kupambana pamoja, uhuru na umoja vitawale. Enyi Bwana na binti wa
Thank you. So we are now into the session where we shall hear from our brother Taiwo Ayedun, who joined our philosophical class on Thursday, and he was he shared some with us, and our brother is keen to share his thoughts with us on what his research has unearthed on the unification of Africa. So he's going to share his thoughts with us. We shall listen to him, and then then if there are any questions, I'm sure our brother will be pleased to answer them. And then after that, we'll open the floor for a general discussion on his thoughts. So he will present, he will answer questions, any questions, and then the floor will open for a discussion of his thoughts. At this point, Brother Pigeon will chair the meeting. Brother Pigeon, are you ready?
Once again, thank you, Brother Kwame, for the first session and the news that actually let us know what's going on the continent. And it's very important that we are being guided with the issues going on in the continent in order to form further discussions on what do we need to tackle, because that tells us the negative and the positive forces. So today, of course, Brother Taiwo will be discussing or sharing. That's what Brother Kwame has said. And once again, comrades, feel most welcome and be with us and join us, and be free to share your thinking once the time comes for us to share our thinking. We might not be having much time remaining. We have an hour, but you hope within that 1 hour we'll be able to cover as much as possible. Hope your presentation, Brother Taiwo, maybe you let us know how much it can take. Then we can now have an interaction and criticizing or going through this and maybe analyzing and making understanding. So, Brother Taiwo, kindly feel free to join us, introduce yourself, tell us maybe who you are a bit and maybe what you do, and then you can go straight to your presentation. Thank you, and feel most welcome.
Thank you. Please, can you allow me to share screen?
Yes, Brother Kwame, you can make Brother Taiwo maybe a co-host. Okay, thank you. Brother Taiwo, kindly confirm once you are a co-host, you can proceed with sharing your screen.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, clear.
Very clear. I wish to thank my fellow comrades for giving me the invitation to share what I've learned. It is my hope that we take this information, review it, compare it to what we already know, expand our knowledge, and see how it can guide us to achieve our objective of having African unification. So I've titled the talk Towards African Unification, Lessons and Pathways. I started this journey trying to understand, first of all, why many African countries are not well governed. That was how I began my journey. And I realized that the lack of stability in many African countries compared to other continents where there has been effective unions or alliances, I realized that when I looked at the data, there are some patterns that we can see in what makes a society actually function. And so that's what I want to share with you today, to see how it might help us begin to think of how African unification may be achieved. So this is the agenda, quick introduction, define African unification. I'm sure my definition is not necessarily complete. I'm sure our comrade brothers and sisters will have one that's even more better refined, but that's fine. Of course, the importance of African unification, we all know what it is, but I'll venture to share some of that. And then there's something called social capital, which I'll define briefly, and I'll talk about the role of social capital in African unification as that's impacted unification or alliances in other parts of the world. The importance
Sorry,
of
please, could you
stability
speak up
and
a bit?
good governance.
Please,
Yeah,
could
Okay.
you speak
brother,
up
your
a bit?
voice
Sorry.
isn't very clear. Yeah.
Okay, is this better now? The
Can you increase
importance.
your volume just a bit?
Your volume's a bit low.
Okay, what about now? Is this better?
No change.
Is this no change? I am using my
Maybe
mic.
speak into the microphone. Speak into
sorry.
the microphone.
Yeah.
Sorry, I must say,
But I
Sister
still
Ida,
know.
I must say I can hear him very clearly.
Oh,
His
well,
voice
I'm on full volume and I can't
is
hear.
at
Turn your volume, turn your
yeah.
volume, please.
Yeah.
Brother, I tell you,
Yes.
you can because from my side, I also can hear you clearly. Maybe some of us need to adjust their volume of their devices, and you can also try to get volume from your side as well.
Sure. Some of
And
us
this
need
has
to
been-
check our volume. But as for me, it is clear, loud and clear. I'm getting it loud and clear.
And
So-
if you have a headset, if you plug in your headset, you might have better volume as well.
Maybe.
And
Yeah.
since
maybe that-
this is being recorded as well, since
Yeah.
this is being recorded, hopefully you can hear it later as well. Okay. But I'll try my best to speak up as I'm doing right now. And then of
So
course,
proceed, brother.
shall I continue? Okay. So then I will also speak about the determinants of good governance, since this is the bedrock. The countries that need to unify, majority of them have to have good governance and stability before they can actually even think of unification. Of course, I'll talk about the pathways to African unification. It's just a suggestion. It is not the full answer. There's many ways to achieve it, but we might want to consider some new ways as well. And then I'll talk about conclusion, and then we do a Q&A. So very quickly, I want to talk about the prerequisites and the potential of African unification. I will examine other continental unions. I'll focus on the European Union as a primary case study, but there are unions also in Asia and in the Asia primarily, and then in the American Pacific region as well. So let me just quickly dive into that. So defining African unification, it refers to, in my mind, the political, economic, and social integration of African states to form a cohesive and unified continental entity. The objective, of course, is political stability to enhance economic cooperation and global competitiveness, and to foster cultural and social integration amongst African countries. This is kind of similar to what the Europeans have been trying to achieve with the EU, to try to unify diverse European states under a single political and economic framework. So the importance of African unification, I have like four blocks in which I kind of shared them. Obviously, economic benefits, greater market integration that leads to economies of scale, increase investment, and improve competitiveness globally. Political stability, collective security, and unified stance on international issues. We also want social integration. We want to promote Pan-African identity and reduce intercontinental conflicts. And then, of course, another one is environmental and health coordination, to have a unified approach to handling pandemics and environmental crises. So now, this seems like a very leading approach to trying to solve the problem. But the reason why I picked it up is because of what I've already learned. So I want to talk about the role of social capital. First of all, social capital is the networks or relationships among people in the society that enables our society to function effectively. So now, it's a very crucial factor in functioning societies and economies, and plays a significant role in the overall well-being of individuals and communities. It actually helps to explain why some communities are better able to manage collective action, problems such as crime, education, public health, and economic development more effectively than others. So it plays a very crucial role. And we'll find out as I go along, what are the ingredients, what type of demography and structure needs to happen before you can have effective social capital. So now the presence of majority group contributes to trust and social cohesion. We have many examples, but of course the ones that are very obvious is the successful unions in the Scandinavian countries. when we think of social capital as it applies to Africa, there are challenges due to diverse languages and culture. It turns out that trust does not travel effectively between ethno-linguistic groups, okay? And then, of course, we have to look at strategies to build inclusive social capital across different groups in Africa. So the importance of stability and good governance, obviously, is that it enhances stability, which is essential for economic growth. Of course, good governance is crucial for effective management as well. We want justice, and we also want to deliver public services equitably. We want to have effective management of public resources. If you notice in the EU, for instance, there's an emphasis on democratic values. The conditions for membership include rule of law and human rights. These are both bedrocks of good governance, as we will expand on later on. So these are the determinants of good governance. And the reason why we come across these 4 blocks is that I looked at, and I'll show the data subsequently, I looked at countries that are ranked very highly on good governance. There's actually an index. There's many indices, actually. There's an index on rule of law. There's an index on corruption perception. There's an index on democratic participation and democracy. And there's also an index on good governance. So I looked at all of these and put them together. And of course, we know that rule of law is important. We know that transparency and accountability is also important to have in a society and to be able to hold the leaders accountable. We know that participation and inclusiveness is critical. If the people cannot participate, there's no way that their voice can be heard. And of course, we want effectiveness and efficiency as well. The ability of government to formulate and implement policies successfully. So one of the things I looked at also while I was doing my studies is something called ethno-linguistic fractionalization. There is actually something called a ethno-linguistic fractionalization index, ELF for short. ELF itself is the probability that 2 individuals drawn randomly from a country's ethnic groups are not from the same group. So that means they could be from different ethnic groups, different religious groups, or whatever the criterion is. But we're focused right now on ethno-linguistic fractionalization. The ELF index is an approximation. It's a measure of the similarity between languages, varying from 1, meaning that the population speaks 2 or more unrelated languages, to 0, the entire population speaks the same language. Now, on the next slide, when I put together the data of over 190 countries, we measured the good governance ranking, democracy ranking, regime type, and I listed, and I created basically 10 groups. So these are deciles. In the first decile, these are the countries in the first decile. And what we notice is if you look at the countries from New Zealand, Norway, Switzerland, Finland, Denmark, and so on and so forth, up onto Portugal, we find that all of these guys, they are in the top ranking for good governance. And the proxy for ELF is in the right column, which I have the largest ethno-linguistic group in that country. You see that all of these countries have a majority ethno-linguistic group. And the higher the ethnic group percentage, the larger ethnic group percentage, the lower the ethno-linguistic fractionalization, based on the way it is measured. So this is very crucial. But of course, we don't see any African country here. So, but we're very lucky. When I looked down, we found these 4 countries in the 2nd and 3rd decile. Okay, so these are the highest ranking African countries when it comes to good governance. And you can see also there's a correlation between their ranking being high in good governance and the fact that each of these countries has a majority ethno-linguistic group. Okay, this is very telling, very important. And I can say very quickly that Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, those 3 countries and some other ones, they have very high ELF. And of course, in terms of good governance, they are ranked much lower. Then I'd read some literature and I found something. There's a publication called The Language Conflicts and Political Community. It was published in 1967. In that publication, I have some excerpts, which I hope you can read, but I'll read them very quickly. It says, in the Western world of the mid-19th century, language became accepted as the most important single defining characteristics of nationality. Fitch summed up a widely influential attitude when it asserted, wherever a separate language is found, there is also a separate nation which has the right to manage its affairs and to rule itself. Then, of course, in the second paragraph, in the 20th century, this notion has had continued prominence. The peacemakers of Versailles tended to define national boundaries on the basis of language, so with appropriate exceptions in favor of the victor powers, and they showed an unprecedented respect for the rights of linguistic minorities. This general attitude was also reflected in the subsequent transfer of population. Mussolini seemed to feel that his claim to the south of Tyrol would be valid only if the region were populated by Italian-speaking people, and urged Italians to migrate there. Hitler later invoked the same principle against the Western Allies when, in the 1930s, he claimed the right of all German-speaking peoples of Austria, the Sudetenland, Alsace, and Poland to be united, and important elements of public opinion in the West found it difficult to deny his claim, at least in the first two instances. Even today, that was in the 1960s when this was published, Charles de Gaulle appears to be highly skeptical of the possibility that any nation could be constructed as a federation of the various West European language groups. So in other words, what we find in Africa, in many African countries, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, with many language groups, the Europeans don't find it acceptable as a definition of a nation. So that's very telling. Let me proceed. We're almost done. We're halfway through my presentation now. Now, breakdown of social consensus, the political economy of culture and ethnicity. Another publication that I reference here, one of the things I want to pull out from that publication is that it said when the overlap between culture and ethnicity is high, public goods provision suffers and economic development lags behind. So we can, this is the absence of social capital. Okay, when you see this kind of clashes, okay, and then let me move on very quickly. Now, I also want to reference a publication on review of ethnocultural.
Oh, sorry. Can I say something? Please don't feel rushed, brother.
Oh,
Tayo,
okay. Don't
feel rushed. Take your time. Yeah, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So there's another publication published by Harvard University socioeconomists. This is a review of ethnocultural and ethno-linguistic fragmentation research. And on the next page, I quote some things from that publication as well. Now, this is cross-country settings here. Easterly and Levine in 1997 have shown that per capita GDP growth is inversely related to ethno-linguistic fractionalization in a large sample of countries. In particular, they argue that much of Africa's growth failure is due to ethnic conflict, partly as a result of absurd borders left by former colonizers. Our index of ELF is significant in the minimalist regression for corruption, bureaucratic delays, infrastructure quality, infant mortality, illiteracy, and school attainment. It is significant or nearly significant controlling for GDP per capita for corruption, infant mortality, and illiteracy. The sign of the coefficient always implies that more fractionalization leads to a lower quality of government. This index is also negatively associated with the share of transfers over GDP. The democracy index is inversely related to the ethno-linguistic fractionalization when latitude is not controlled for. This result is consistent with theory and evidence presented in Argonne, AL, in 2002. The idea is that in more fragmented societies, a group imposes restrictions on political liberty to impose control on the other ethnic groups. In more homogeneous societies, it is easier to rule more democratically since conflicts are less intense. We concluded that ethnic and linguistic fractionalization variables, more so than religious ones, are likely to be important determinants of economic success, both in terms of output, GDP growth, other measures of welfare and policy quality, such as literacy rate, infant mortality, etc., and the quality of institutions measured by the extent of corruption political freedom, etc. So that I pulled out some of these key points, and this is a cross-country research, both in Europe, Asia, Africa. And so there's no bias there. Let me go to the next one. There's something also called Gini coefficient or Gini index. The Gini index or Gini coefficient measures income distribution across a population. It often serves as a gauge of economic inequality, measuring income distribution or, less commonly, wealth distribution amongst the population. The coefficient ranges from 0% or to 100%, with 0 representing perfect equality and 1 representing perfect inequality. Values over 1 are theoretically possible due to negative income or wealth. On the next slide, this is the ranking for Gini. So these are the lowest. These are the countries with the lowest Gini coefficients. In other words, they have the lowest inequality. That means there's more equality in that society. And you can see them. I also on the right-hand side, I looked at the proxy for ELF, which is whether that country has a majority ethno-linguistic group. You'll notice, of course, that virtually all of them, except for Timor-Leste, has a majority ethno-linguistic group that is over 50% of the population. Okay. On the next slide, I show the African countries that have the lowest Gini. Okay, these are the most equal countries. Now, to be very clear, equality does not mean that that society is affluent or wealthy, right? Equality could also mean that all of them are poor, as in Sudan, for instance. But if you look at the countries here with the lowest Ginis, Algeria, Egypt, Mauritania, and Tunisia, and you can see that each of these countries has a large ethno-linguistic group, over 50% of the population, except for Sudan, which is at 35%. So there's a lot of pattern we can see here. Okay, let me try to bring more information here. So here's the conclusion that we can draw, okay? The prospect for good governance is directly related to political accountability. Okay, in other words, the ability of citizens to achieve consensus, to elect good leaders, protest bad governance, hold politicians accountable, and to demand change. Now, it is not the case that every nation with a majority ethno-linguistic group has good governance. That's not what we're saying. But it is the case that every nation with good governance has a majority ethno-linguistic group. Okay, and it is naturally better able to achieve consensus required for political accountability. Okay, so put another way, we could find no nation without a majority ethno-linguistic group in the top decile for good governance. So the corollary is also true. Therefore, a nation state with a majority ethno-linguistic group is a precondition for a functioning society and good governance. So we can see the pattern of why Africa has this problem. Now, I have a chart on the next page that kind of helps us visualize how this works, okay? In other words, at the lowest level, if you can see my laser pointer here, at the lowest level here, we find that in small communities like we are now, this group, this conscientiousism group that is together, because we're small in number, it's very easy for us to have consensus, notwithstanding different languages or even different races. As long as we're small, because our objectives are similar, because our goals are similar, because the pain we will feel is similar, it's very easy for us to have consensus. But on a larger scale, once the population begins to grow, consensus becomes very difficult. And what we find is that in large countries or a nation, okay, consensus then is easier among people that speak the same language. When that country does not have a majority ethno-linguistic group, it then means that there's no majority consensus, okay? So in order for us to have political consensus, we want to make sure that we have small communities. We also want to make sure that we have a country that has autonomy to be dominated by majority ethno-linguistic group. That then makes political consensus possible. Now, when you have political consensus, it means that it's very easy then for citizens to unify and to protest, okay? Okay, that's because we comrades, we're always trying to organize people to protest. And sometimes we find that it's very difficult to organize people to protest. I also have a different literature, by the way, that shows that virtually all the successful revolutions, most of the majority of successful revolutions have happened in societies where there's a majority ethno-linguistic group. That's very telling. Now, also, if you have consensus, it means that it's very easy for us to agree on what a good leader is. Most often, in countries that don't have majority ethno-linguistic group, democracy is like ethnic competition for political power. It's not actually an election. So democracy suffers in such countries. So now when we can elect good leaders and we can also unify to process their bad behavior, then it's very easy for us to now agree on what a strong political institution is. In other words, our legal system is going to work, our electoral system is going to work because there is consensus amongst the people, okay, because we're not divided by our ethnicity or language. And then, of course, once we have strong institutions, rule of law then becomes possible. And if rule of law is enforced, it means that we can hold politicians accountable and then we can have good governance. So that is the framework that I was able to draw from the data. Now, let me be very clear. None of these things is saying anything about our ability as human beings to socialize or to have economic integration. It does not mean that we're prevented or we find it difficult to fall in love across ethnic lines or language lines or racial lines. It does not mean that our best friends, okay, cannot be white or black, or cannot be Kenyan or Nigerian or Ugandan. That's not what this is saying, okay? It's simply saying that the only time we have conflict as humans is when we have to share power politically across ethno-linguistic lines. That is the only problem we're facing, okay? Not social integration, not economic integration. And when we don't have, we cannot solve that political problem, we cannot have good governance. We cannot have stability because there's no social capital. 4 more slides to go. Now, so I'm just trying to capture things now. Social and economic integration amongst disparate ethnic groups or racial groups are not obstacles, as I just said, but power sharing amongst disparate ethnic groups or racial groups is problematic. Democracy or governance among disparate ethnic or racial groups without a majority manifests as ethnic or racial competition, thus preventing consensus, selection of meritocratic leaders, and political accountability. The solution then is to restructure society for self-determination from where good governance can then materialize. So the stability arising from good governance across African nations will then make it easy for the African unification to be possible. 3 more slides to go. So what are the pathways? Obviously, when people have power, they don't give it up easily. And the idea of fighting our way through, we fought a war in Nigeria in 1967 through 1970, when Biafra was trying to break away. So wars are very difficult. I know that Sudan also fought wars for decades before there was a split between South Sudan and Sudan. So fighting wars to try to achieve self-determination is very difficult, it's very bloody. At the same time, it's not easy for African leaders to give up the power they have. Most of this power are to be able to take advantage of the resources of the society. So how do we then figure out a way to negotiate with these leaders and the elites to permit self-determination for African indigenous ethnic groups? We need to give some thought to that, okay? Because what they want is economic gain. They want economic power. Is there a way to give them that economic power, some of it, and then so that we can get a self-determination, and then Africa can begin to heal, we can begin to have consensus in each of our autonomous spaces, and then we can now begin to build alliances. So if we can achieve good governance through social capital and consensus and good governance, and then we can then build security and economic alliances, and then it's much easier then for us to move towards establishing an African union. And so this is just the conclusion, just summarizing it. Let's push for self-determination as a precondition for African unification. Let's encourage stakeholders to commit to the vision of a unified Africa, and then so that we should all actively participate in the process as well. So thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation. I'll provide this presentation to the group, and then I'm happy to take questions, and then we can even refine it further from all our learnings. Thank you so much, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Can you clap for our brother? And Brother Kwame, you can come in.
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation, my brother. Appreciate that.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, brother Tao.
Yes, sir.
Are you based in Nigeria, by the way?
Yeah, actually, I traveled back and forth between Nigeria and the United States. I didn't give my background. My background is as I'm a software engineer. And when I left college in Nigeria, I went to school in America to study aerospace engineering. But then eventually I went into study computer science, and then I worked for Microsoft Corporation in Redmond, Washington. When I was trying to come, after spending 14 years in America, in 2000, I wanted to come back to Nigeria to try to replicate some of the economic successes that I saw. One of the things I saw in America was that credit was very available to almost everybody. If you have a job, you're going to get a loan to buy a car, to buy a home, and things like that. And I knew that I could never really get loans when I was in Nigeria. So one of the things that they use is called a credit bureau. If you're familiar with Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, they have them in South Africa as well. They also have credit bureaus in Kenya. So what I did was, because I was a software engineer, I'm a software engineer, I actually created Nigeria's first credit bureau called Credit Registry. So I started the credit bureau. While I was coming to Nigeria, though, I began to now examine this topic of why is it that other countries are doing better and other countries are not doing better. And that's when I began to research all these things and come to this information. So I travel back and forth between America and Nigeria. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. So in terms of ethnic fractionalization, which part of Nigeria are you from?
Well, I am Yoruba.
Yoruba, okay.
Yes, in the Southwest.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. No, thank you for your presentation. You can see quite a number of people have put their emails in the chat for you to send to share the slides with them. What I would advise you do, if you are willing to share, is please, before you share, put your copyright mark underneath the slides before you share.
Okay.
Yeah, so that everybody knows that is your work. And also share it as a PDF document with your copyright underneath. Is this the first time you are presenting these very slides to a group like us?
Yes, so I had to modify. I already had the content.
Right.
I've shared the content in the past with some groups, but I had to modify it to address African unification. But
Right.
again, the reason why I had the content in the first place is because we're all trying to solve the same problem, right? We're all worrying, how come Africa isn't working? So the content is really about evidence elsewhere that we can utilize and employ to figure out how to solve our own problems. So I added new slides. So this one is the first presentation that I made specifically for this audience. But the content, some of the content is something I already have.
Thank you so much. Then when you put your copyright, add that you did this presentation, you put this together specifically for the Consensus Study Group. We'll appreciate that very much.
I would do that. I would do that.
Thank you. I have put so what we might do is Brother Pigeon will pick the emails from the chat, and anybody else who is interested. And then once you send it to us, we will then share it on your behalf. Is that okay with you?
Fantastic. Yeah. That's okay. I have Brother Pigeon's WhatsApp number, so I would give him the slide deck, and then he can share with the group.
Excellent. So in that case, I won't share my email in the chat because you can share it. Once you share it by that Pigeon, we will all receive it. Okay. No, thank you for your presentation. I noticed the focus was not when we discussed it philosophically, you came across much stronger. You seem to come across much stronger against unification. But I noticed that today's presentation was, in my view, more balanced in terms of, yes, there are these problems, but what can be done? So thank you very much. Some of us will study this again and see. Now, let's open the floor for others. But before that, please, if you have any questions for Brother Tayo, do come in. I will call the names of those whose hands are up one at a time. If we don't finish the discussion today, it's our platform, it's our program. We are happy to invite Brother Tayo, if he can, to join us again next Saturday. So we have part 2. It's perfectly okay. So we have hands up. Oh, quite a few. Brother Tayo, you are famous. Quite a few hands up. Let's start with the sisters. So because it's always for me ladies first. So Sister Ida.
I will go with that sexist, what's its name, and I'll ask my question first. See, I'm hopping before the first person. Brother Tayo, I liked your presentation, but to me, at the end, what you said about you being a software engineer and stuff like that, to me, I asked, why are you not saying this for maybe not banking as such, but banking for people at the grassroots level, like say you know how there's mobile banking for almost everybody can use it, and I'm wondering why your presentation couldn't be put towards using your skill as a software engineer for that sort of mobile thing to get, because to me
So Sarah, what is your question?
hold on. Let me just stumble this a bit and get to what I'm trying to say.
Spider, hold on.
Yes.
If you want to have a discussion, that's fine. But this session is for questions, and then we'll come to
Yes, but my
discussion.
question's about unification.
So go straight to your.
So my question is, what you've told us, because I don't think everybody can change their language or have more than one language, or are not that talented in that respect. But money has a unifying force on everybody, whether we like it or not. So I think that maybe you should be thinking about saying the same, but for money.
That is not a question. That is a suggestion.
It's a suggestion, but it's what to me. Because
so do you have a question for Brother
information? Okay, I'll get off.
Do you have a question for him?
That was my question. That could he not change his presentation, looking at it for money for those who are less privileged, don't have as much money, using his software skill.
I can quickly. Let me quickly answer Sister Ida. Sister Ida, actually, like I said, my skills as a software engineer, I used to build a credit bureau, Nigeria's first credit bureau. The function of a credit bureau is to make it easy for banks to lend, actually. So I'm actually applying my skill set to helping from a financial perspective. But I can expand on that some more privately if you want to know. So
I thank you. I like the presentation, but because it was, I can only go with what I can understand and then put it to my level.
Thank you, Sister Ida.
Thank you.
Right. Let's go to let's see. January. Unmute yourself and ask your question, please. After that, we go to Brother Glenroy. January, unmute yourself. What's your question?
Are you getting
Brother Tayo? Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for giving me space. I'm January Mvula from Malawi. Let me thank the author for the good research, which is more of informing. And then I just want to look at the element of education. My question is looking at the element of the education in Africa. What did he find out about education on the context? Thank you.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. I didn't focus study on education specifically, but as you can tell in the research that was done, it is saying that countries who don't have majority ethno-linguistic groups, they suffer from a lot of things, including public goods provision, including literacy rates that are lower, and basically all the negative things that we know of in terms of governance, they suffer from it. And that is because there's no social capital, okay? There's no consensus, primarily, because the leaders are not being held accountable. The leaders are basically getting away with murder, okay? Because the society cannot agree, okay, to elect good leaders, to hold them accountable. Put another way, if you give people their freedom, whether a group here or a small community, if there are no laws in that country preventing them from having autonomy, they know what's good. We have a global, the world is global now. If you see that some societies are advancing because of education, you can bring that to society as well, to your community as well. But there are laws in many countries that are preventing us from having the autonomy we need to build our society. So every social network of humans, they are self-regulating unless there's some coercion. There's coercion internally or externally. So, so most African countries, where there's a lot of political coercion from the politicians. And we cannot get together in that country because of our ethno-linguistic differences to basically protest the bad policies. We're always siding. We're siding with the leader from our ethnic group. Okay, we don't want to protest against him. And so that's a problem. So education is part of that. So we will be better off. Each community will be better off if they have the autonomy. It does not stop us at all from having alliances. It does not mean that like that strangers living in your society will get the short end of the stick. You know, that's not what it means. Because think about it. Pre-colonial times, before the white people came to Africa, we had settlers coming from different ethnic groups and settling in our territories. Okay, we don't do anything evil against them, but the one thing they never did, they never contested for the monarchy of the space of the host country. What we find in Africa today is competition for the political amongst different ethnic groups. So that's where the conflict is. We need to solve that problem. If we solve that problem, everything else is okay. Social integration is okay. Economic integration is okay. Once we solve the political problem, it then makes it easy for us to have the alliances we need to unify Africa. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Brother Glenroy, your question, please.
Thank you. I think Kuruma was ahead of me, but let me do mine because it's a very simple and straightforward question. I was late to join you, Comrade Tayo, but I saw where you list that the social interaction would not be a barrier to other activity, and that sharing power or sharing or authority would place a restriction. I would go backward a little bit and say there would also be a restriction in regard to social interaction. Because I think, you know, if you think of it from a class perspective, classes do not, or the so-called people consider themselves ruling class, very rarely socially interact with the working class. So I didn't quite get how you can say that it would be perfectly okay, or it would happen that people will have social interaction but not be willing to share power. So I just wonder if you could expand on that a little bit. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for your question. The best examples to sort of understand this is to look at it, say Norway, for instance. Look at Sweden. Look at the Scandinavian countries. Okay, you notice that the social welfare system is better. Switzerland, their social welfare system is better because virtually everybody is the same. They have a very, very low fractionalization. Okay, basically, when there's political power contest, it's just the same ethnic group competing for power. So in that sense, they care about electing just the best leaders. Okay, the policies that are passed by these leaders benefit the same ethnic group, right? And so the wealthy people in that society don't have the opportunity to capture the states as is possible, say, in America, for instance, and in some other countries like even Nigeria and Uganda. So the point is this: once we can handle the consensus, the social capital, then we can then elect the right leaders. We can also protest bad policies, hold them accountable, and then the rich people that then cannot have the opportunity to go to the leaders and gain an advantage. So if you notice in those countries, look at the Gini coefficient. There is more equality in those countries than, say, in Nigeria or even in America. America also is having a very high ELF now because the number of white people is going down. The population of white people dropped in America at the time of Nixon's resignation in 1974. It dropped from 83% Caucasians. Now in 2021, it's 57.8% Caucasian in America. In the state of Texas, there are now more Hispanics. So all of the problems with America today has to do with the fact that racially, America is getting less white. So to your question, sir, you got to solve the political problem first, okay? That does not give the rich an advantage, okay? Because the population, the larger society itself, have consensus. So they will push back against policies that disenfranchises them. You understand? Thank you.
Thank you, Taiwo. The next is Brother Nkrumah. Kafra, your question, please. Just a reminder of all of us, we will have a discussion, but if you have any questions, ask now, and then we'll move to any discussions after that. Thank you. Nkrumah. Unmute yourself,
You have to unmute yourself, Brother Nkrumah.
Maybe he's not ready. I'll come back to him. Pigeon.
Yes. How about hello?
Okay. All right, Brother Nkrumah. Yes.
Yes.
Your question.
Yes, I'm going to ask. I am going to ask a question. However, I pray that I get chance to make some statements afterwards in whatever
later.
discussion, right?
Yes, later. That's fine.
Yes. The question I have for the brother is not all that you have researched and all the solutions you recommend and all the indices you look at, not part of the same enslaving white supremacist system that controls the world? That's my question.
Sorry, your question is?
Yeah, I think I understand his question.
Okay.
He's making the case that the information that I presented appears to be coming from white people that are enslaving us. So actually, this is cross-country evidence, right? So it's really about human behavior, right? Yes, it is true that, white people, they intruded into our territory, into our space. They have more advanced weaponry. They use that to brutalize us, to enslave us, and to colonize us. And so that's true. But the behavior of Africans today, right? How do we explain it? Are Africans less human for us not to be able to have good governance in our societies? Or is there something else? Is there some structural issues that is making us behave the way we are? And we can see that white people are the same. Let me mention something. 75%, 3 out of every 4 countries in Europe, 3 out of every 4 has a majority ethno-linguistic group. Whereas in Africa, it's only 28% of the countries. Okay. So European unification, if you heard Charles de Gaulle, he made this statement. He does not believe that a nation state can be formed in Europe that is a compendium of all of its ethnic groups. You understand? So this is just human behavior. It has nothing. The fact that a socioeconomist was able to look at evidence across countries and present data does not mean that we should find the data not acceptable, right? The data is not skewed. It's simply measuring human behavior. And so we need to learn from that, understand why Africans are behaving the way we are, and then how to solve that problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Brother Pigeon.
I guess no chance to respond?
No. He's answering your question. You can come back in the discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, let's deal with questions.
Okay, thank you, Brother Kwame. I'm trying to join
Pigeon.
Yeah, my question is, based on that ethno-linguistic groupings, I'll give an example of Swaziland with one family, not even a tribe or a community, one family. But you can check to me how is the so-called development index being one family, not even a one ethnic community. Do that make them govern better? Example of an African one community. Compare this to Tanzania, where the current president, in terms of the political power, it is the first time when Magufuli came to power, where the majority community, I want to do the comparative analysis to justify whether one ethno-linguistic community based on this research is truly an instrument towards good governance as comparison to those 2 countries where in Tanzania, it was the first time where Magufuli becomes from the majority community leading the country, where all over 60 years, the majority community had not been ruling that country. You see? So how is that balance in terms of occasions and occurrence in the continent try to actually counter the ethno-linguistic community as an aspect of or elements of good governance?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very relevant question. If you notice this green box here, if you can still see my screen, I said that a majority ethno-linguistic group is a precondition, right? So, and if you go back above in the, I guess the purple or the deep blue, it said, it is the case that every nation with good governance has a majority ethno-linguistic group. In other words, it is not the case that that's the only thing you need, but it is the one thing you need before you can get to good governance. You understand? Then if you look at this green box here, no nation without a majority ethno-linguistic group is in the top decile for good governance. So this is all true. So look at Zimbabwe, for instance. Zimbabwe does have a majority ethno-linguistic group, but it is by no means doing very well. Like maybe it's recently doing better now. But Botswana does have a majority ethno-linguistic group. 79% of the population is the Swana people. In Zimbabwe, the Shona people are the majority. Yet Botswana is doing better. Botswana has never had a single coup since independence. Okay. Botswana has had election on time since independence. It is a very stable country, as well as the other countries I mentioned, Seychelles, Mauritius, and a few other countries. And Cape Verde. So to your question, sir, the fact that Swaziland has one family does not by itself means that we should use it as the example of what a successful nation should be. Now, so Swaziland is quite stable, right? But its GDP per capita is not very high. So there's something else there. Why the people are not protesting? They could, because they're the majority. I mean, they're the same people.
They are.
But
Brother Tayo, they are protesting.
Yeah. Okay. But why the protest is not successful? Okay. Let's not use that to dismiss the evidence that we see. So in other words, the evidence is what the evidence is, right? And I'm saying that in order for us to have a chance, Swaziland may have a chance in the future, but a country like Nigeria has no chance. No chance. A country like Uganda has no chance unless you have self-determination for those ethno-linguistic groups, because that's what the evidence shows. So I just want to say that we're supposed to use the evidence to understand that structurally, to achieve good governance, this is what the structure should be. It does not mean that every country that has that structure is successful, but that is what you need first before you can be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is brother Joseph, please.
Yeah. At first, I was more going to make a comment. I mean, a comment, but I hear what you say.
No
and
questions first.
And I will no. Yeah, and I'm saying that I hear what you say, so I respect it. So I have to formulate a question, and that is, in the context of what you said about the need for ethnic majority or a linguistic majority, in the situation with Tanzania, and I'm glad that somebody mentioned a while ago that the first time that the majority group is now a power. You had Julius Nyerere uniting all the groups, and I wouldn't say tribes, and doing one thing, and I think that is an example we need to look at, where he made Kiswahili.
Brother Joseph, what is your question?
No, I'm asking the question. We ask questions in different ways. I'm saying that and it might be long-winded, but I'm saying that Nyerere made Kiswahili the common language. Would you say that has been successful, and is it showing any strain even at this time, the disintegration of Tanzania? Having made Kiswahili the central language of the people of Tanzania.
Yeah, thank you for your question. To be very clear, even though there is a common language in Tanzania, there actually is no majority ethno-linguistic group actually. Yes, Tanzania speaks Swahili, but they also have their own indigenous language as well. I think the largest ethnic group in Tanzania, if I remember correctly, is about 16% of the population. Okay, so Tanzania does not have a majority ethnic group. So I don't know if that helps to address your question.
Okay, so you are sharing some pages with us, Brother Taiwo, yeah?
Yes.
From Tanzania.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
next, thank you for answering the question. Next, Dr. Daniel Mugapa, Gaka. Sorry. Please, your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You can hear me?
Yes, please.
Our brother has indicated that self-determination should be encouraged so that we gain stability as the lowest unit. Then we start unifying Africa. I know we have tried that. In Kenya, we call it secession. At some point, because of political disagreements, our coastal line have spoken on the issue of secession a few times after general elections. But we now have units in Kenya, we call it counties. The politics we have around county government is now has been reduced from tribe to clans. I don't know how further down we can go in terms of self-determination so that we start building up, so that we start going up into unifying Africa. But most times, what I see people think, and that is what is fed to most of our African people, is that if we have one of our own in power, that is if one of our tribesmen is in power, then we stand to gain.
Brother Daniel.
But it's a political ideology which is spread.
Brother Daniel,
yes.
Is this a question or
yes.
a comment?
Yeah, I can.
Is this a question for the brother?
Yeah, I think I understand this question. So
okay,
what
let me reframe it. I think I asked how down can we go? How down can we go in terms of self-determination?
Right. So let me just try to explain. So
if Kenya we have to do self-determination, how down do we need to go before we start rising to unifying Africa?
So Kenya actually does not have self-determination for its peoples. It has what you might call devolution of powers or decentralization of power. That is totally different from self-determination. Self-determination means that an indigenous ethno-linguistic group, okay, has political autonomy. In other words, that unit is controlled by their resources, the political power, everything is by those people. In Kenya today, you still have to vote for a president. All of these different ethnic groups still have to vote for one president. So you don't have self-determination. So just to clarify that your example does not apply. And one of the ways to explain the problem is that look at Europe, for instance. Liechtenstein, the population of Liechtenstein is what? Less than 1 million people. There are many countries in Europe that are tiny, very tiny, right? And yet they have self-determination, they're political independence, and they function very well. And yet there's also an alliance. So the issue about how far you go is not a problem that you have to worry about. It is for the ethnic group that is seeking self-determination to worry about that. If they cannot survive, they will choose to merge with another ethnic group, you understand? And I don't think there's any ethnic group that cannot survive on its own. So let's be very careful not to mix devolution of power and decentralization with self-determination. Two different things.
Okay, thank you very much. The last question, because it's the last hand up, is our own Joan
Kimani, yeah.
Joan, question, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. My question is, you spoke of alliances. Are the alliances being formed among African countries, and what will be the alliances about?
I missed the last.
What are the alliances about? What are the alliances about?
Yes, and yeah.
The alliances that Africans should form.
Sister Kimani, ask your question again.
I don't know who's cutting her off.
Nobody's cutting her off. She's muting herself.
Mr.
Joe, yeah, ask your question again. Thank you.
No, he spoke about alliances as a solution. So I'm wondering, like, if he can expound more on the alliances and what the alliances will be about. Like, if it's the African countries will form an alliance for this, or like, I didn't understand that part.
Okay, let me expand on that. The whole idea of African unification is to leverage our size, right, for a competitive advantage, right? So if we're unified, we have over 1 billion Africans. So that is a big economic market. If we have easy trade routes through Africa, okay, we buy it from ourselves as opposed to importing, from outside. So those are the advantages. Also, there's the concern about small African countries called the balkanization. The idea that small African countries are defenseless, you understand? So the way to address that is that a small African country is not on its own, right? Through alliances, just like you have NATO, right? NATO is an alliance of European countries and America, and they even have NATO Plus. They're trying to add Japan. In other words, if you fight any of the NATO countries, you're fighting all of the NATO countries. So an alliance can be a security alliance, which is really the essence, part of the essence of African unification. Now, the Europeans cannot just fight one country, they're fighting an entire continent. So the alliances would solidify that. That means any African country that is attacked by any foreign powers that is not in Africa, all of us are involved in fighting that foreign power. And of course, we know the advantages of economic alliances. The EU was formed partly to have a big bloc, a big trading bloc, so that instead of Germany trying to trade by itself with China or America, the entire EU, which is a much larger size, population size, can trade for competitive advantage. In fact, China's advantage today is its population size as well. So I hope by that you can understand the reason why we need to form alliances, because that is really the bedrock of African unification. Thank you.
Yeah, the time is, everybody has asked their question. There are no more hands up. So that we've exhausted all the questions. Some brothers and sisters did indicate that they want to have a further discussion. So Brother Tayo, if you're happy to come back next week, we'll have part 2. In the part 2, you will just summarize your presentation. You will do a full presentation again, and then we'll have a discussion. I have a lot of comments to make, but as this is not a session for discussion, I'm going to leave. I've also left my discussion on the side. So yeah, so if you're happy, can I ask the audience here, are you all happy to come back next week for the discussion? What do you think?
I thought we were going to have a small discussion now.
Sorry, we finished at 9.
Yes.
We won't go further. We try to be disciplined in terms of time. We start at 7 and we finish at 9.
All my thoughts are fresh in my head.
Time. Sorry. Sorry, Brother Nkrumah.
No, I said only thoughts and ideas are fresh in my head. Now, next week, another story.
Why don't you write them?
I hear you, brother, but we have to bring the meeting to a conclusion.
Brother
Some people are living where
it's
midnight.
Yeah, you could write them in the chat and we can bring it up next week.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Put it in the chat. Can I remind us that it may be afternoon in where Brother Nkrumah is, but it's almost midnight where Brother Pigeon is. And so we're all living in different time zones. And so, so let's be mindful of the contexts of other people and so on. So, yeah, put your comments in the chat, brother.
Okay.
It's 2 minutes. It's 2 minutes to 9. Brother Tayo, hold on. Brother Tayo has agreed to come back next week, so that we have a what I would call a scientific discussion about his presentation. So
our revolutionary brother Kwame Ture once said, "A revolutionary doesn't sleep."
Brother, put your comment in the chat. I'm sorry, but we hear you. But some people have to sleep because they are tired. They live in a country that is flooded.
I know.
People have died. Families are on edge, and in such circumstances, at least we are grateful they've been able to come on this WhatsApp group, in this Zoom meeting. But let's be mindful of other people's situations. Please put the comments in the chat. The time is 1 minute to 9, and we'll bring the meeting to a close and ask Brother Pigeon to make any announcements, and then bring the meeting to a close.
Okay. Thank you very much for everybody who have joined us. It was an interesting conversation, as we've said, and Brother Kome said. It was a part of exploring the presentation. So next week, as we have agreed, I will organize and circulate a poster earlier in advance for the part 2 of this. The link is the same you had today, same time next Saturday. And on Thursday, we are having our philosophical class, which is our main purpose. We are a philosophical and ideological class. So this Thursday, same time, 7 p.m. London time, we'll be meeting every Thursday. We've been doing this for so many years, and we continue doing this. So please feel free to join us. If you want to get in touch with us, I've shared my contact. You can add in our broadcast list so that you can get more updates every time. You can join our WhatsApp group. But let's look forward to the next part 2 of this conversation. So thank you very much for your time, and may you have a blessed or a peaceful night. See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Time
you.
is 9
Good
o'clock.
night, all. Thank
Meeting
you,
is
Brother
finished.
Tayo.
Thank you.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Brother Tayo.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
Thank you.
Look forward
Great
to seeing you next week.
presentation.